Welcome everyone. Today we're going to do a quick review of mean, median, mode, and range. So if you remember, the mean is also known as the average. The median is the middle of the data. So after you order the data set, the numbers in the data set from least to greatest, or greatest to least, actually doesn't matter. As long as you order them, you find that middle number, and that is the median. And the mode is the value or values that happen the most. So there could be one mode, no mode, or many modes for a given data set. Now the mean, median, and mode, these are measures of central tendency. So these kind of tell you where the middle of the data is. And then the range is just the difference of the high and low. The range tells you how spread out the data is. All right, so let's go ahead and look at some examples. So our first example is to find the mean, median, mode, and range for the data set. Now if I'm finding all of these, the mean, median, mode, and range, especially if I know I'm going to be doing the median and the range, I do like to put the numbers in order from least to greatest first, and then do my computations. Now if you're just finding the mean, there's really no need to put the numbers in order, but since we're finding all of these values, then I would go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and put these numbers in this data set in order from least to greatest. So here those numbers are 4, 4, 4, 5, 5, 6, 6, 8, and 9. Now to find the mean or the average, what you need to do is you need to find the sum of all the values in the data set. So just add them up and then divide by how many numbers are in that data set. So there are 9 numbers in the data set, so you're going to divide by 9. And when you do that, for this case, you're going to get 51 over 9. 51 over 9 is 5 and 6/9, or 5 and 2/3. If you just plug this in a calculator, you get 5.6. Alright, next up for the median. This is where the ordering from least to greatest comes in handy. We want to find the number that's in the middle of these. So what we typically do is we typically cross off numbers, the smallest and the largest, in pairs. So it's not like you're crossing off the 4 and then you're crossing off the 9. You're actually doing them together in pairs. So you always have to cross off 2 numbers at a time. So I'm crossing off the 4 and the 8 at the same time, the 4 and the 6 at the same time, the 5 and the 6 at the same time, and that gives us 5 in the middle. So our median is 5. We just box that in. Alright, so the mode is the number or numbers that happen the most often. So if I look at this data set, I see 4 happens 3 times, 5 happens twice, 6 happens twice, 8 and 9 happen once each. So 4 happens 3 times, it happens the most. Now if there was another 5 in here, 4 and 5 would be the mode. Okay, so you can have 1 mode, 2 modes, 3 modes, and you can have no mode. So if each of these numbers happen the same number of times, like they all happened once or they all happened twice, you would have no mode. Alright, finally the range, we just need to find the spread of the data by subtracting the high minus the low. So it helps to have the numbers in order for this as well. It's easy to see that 9 is the high, 4 is the low. So our range is a spread of 5, in this case, we'll just say 5 units. Okay. Alright, so that's a quick overview of mean, median, mode, and range. So go ahead and try the on your own, otherwise known as #OYO for on your own. Alright, for the mean, you should have gotten 6 and 5/9, or if you just plugged it in a calculator, 6.5. The median is 6. We do have 2 modes, so it's bimodal, 6 and 9. Both happen twice. And then the range, the spread of the data, is 7. Alright, so let's look at a different example. So the first example and the first on your own, we had an odd number of data values. And that gives us the median as a number all by itself. But let's look at if we have an even number of data values. So here we have 10 pieces of data. So we're going to put them in order and find the mean the same way. So put the numbers in order, find the sum, divide by how many values you have. That would give us 73 tenths, or 7 3/10. You could written as 7.3 again if you used a calculator. Now this is where things are a little bit different, is when we get to the median. So again, we're going to order the numbers from least to greatest, and we're going to cross them off in pairs. So it's really important that you're not just crossing off the lowest, and then the highest, and the lowest, and the highest as kind of one by one, because if you do that, you'll always end up with just a single number in the middle. But if you have an even number of data values, you should have two numbers left in the middle, as long as you're crossing them off in pairs. So I'm crossing off the 3 and the 10 together, the 5 and the 9 together, the 6 and the 9 together, the 7 and the 9 together, and I have a 7 and an 8 in between. So what we need to do is we need to find the number that's exactly in the middle of these two numbers, 7 and 8. Now I think you all know that that's easily 7.5. But how you can find it if the numbers aren't so easy, maybe it was 7 and let's say 14, you can actually find the mean or the average of these two numbers. So what you would do is you'd take the 7 plus the 8, and you would divide it by 2. So that's 15 over 2, which indeed is 7.5. All right, so that would be the median. So whenever you have an even number of data values, you should end up with two numbers in the middle, and then you need to find out the average of those two numbers to find the median. All right, let's take a look at the mode. So what happens the most here? So it's like we have 7 twice, 9 3 times. So 9 is the winner. And the range, the spread of the data, the high is 10, the low is 7. So our spread of data is 7 units. All right, so why don't you go ahead and try this one on your own. Again, there are 10 pieces of data here, 10 data values. So you should end up, when you're doing your median, with two numbers in the middle, and then find the average of those two middles for the median. All right, so the mean, you get 1 over 4 over 10, which is 10 2/5, or 10.4 as a decimal. For the median, you should end up with 10 and 12 in the middle. Again, that's pretty easy visually to know that 11's in the middle, but again, to just show you, 10 plus 12 is 22 over 2, gives us the 11. This is actually trimodal. You have three numbers for the mode. You have 9, 12, and 13 all happening twice. And the range, the spread of the data, is 10 units. All right, the last thing we want to talk about is what's called an outlier. So an outlier is a data value that is much higher or lower than the other values. So it kind of sticks out. It's kind of an anomaly. So let's look at an example here. Determine the outlier, find the mean with and without the outlier. So if you look at this data, you can kind of see this 64 looks suspicious, but it becomes really obvious when you order the numbers from least to greatest. So let's go ahead and do that. So numbering from least to greatest, you get 64, 86, 88, 92, 94, 96, and you can clearly see 64 as an outlier. So let's go ahead and find the mean with the outlier. So with the outlier, we find the sum. We're dividing by 6 because there's 6 data values. We get 520 over 6, which is 86.6, or 86 2/3. All right, so now let's try and find the mean without the outlier. So let's say that 64 didn't happen. What would the mean be? So if we do that, take out that 64, we get 86, 88, 92, 94, and 96. Notice now we're using 5 data values instead of 6. So 456 over 5 is equal to 91 2/10. So notice a low outlier is actually going to drag down the mean. Okay, so a low outlier is going to make the mean lower. And then as you can imagine, a high outlier is going to raise the mean. Okay, so let's go ahead and have you practice one. So in this case, it's pretty obvious we have a higher outlier. So with the outlier, your mean should be a bit higher than without the outlier. So give this one a try. And here you can see with the outlier of 18, you have a mean of 8. Without the outlier, if you take it out, you end up with a mean of 6. Right, so you can see that with the outlier, when the outlier is a higher number, is going to pull up that mean and make it higher. Alright, so that'll do it for today's lesson.